Okay.
Maybe.
Hi, Shiv. All right. Guess we could start soon.
Yeah. In 2 minutes, maybe just.
Got it?
Yeah, in 2 minutes we can
Sure.
start.
Yeah. Just let me know when I should start. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I will say a few words for opening and.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, Geshema. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Geshema, for teaching us again. Again, I'm reminding everyone, if you want to support the teacher or the activity of Dharma Friends of Israel, just in the chat a link, so you can use that. Geshema, stage is yours.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So for the last two lessons, we did only a very kind of coarse visualization. I didn't go into much detail, but I'm thinking today I'll do it a little bit more detailed, having done this two times already, so you're more used to it. Of course, some of you already are used to it, but for those who are not so used to it, but today I'll guide you through visualization, in particular of the Buddha, who's of one nature with your own spiritual teacher, and to just feel the presence of this enlightened being, whose teachings, of course, we hear today in the form of one of the treatises, one of the commentaries on the Buddha's teachings. So, as usual, let's start with a short mindfulness meditation. Just focus on the breath to prepare you for the visualization, to let go of any disruptive thoughts. And now, in the space in front of you, visualize your own spiritual teacher in the aspect of the Buddha. seated on a large open lotus, symbolizing renunciation. And on top of the lotus is a sun disk, symbolizing wisdom. And on top of that, a moon disk, symbolizing compassion. So the Buddha is seated on those lotus, sun disk, and moon disk. And his God body is made of light. And he wears the saffron robes of a monk. He's seated in the full lotus posture. And his right hand is in the earth touching gesture. And his left hand is resting in his lap. And in his left hand, he holds a begging bowl. And think that his face is very compassionate, radiant, and inspiring. His mind having all the qualities we ourselves have the potential to attain. And then think that to the right of the Buddha is Nagarjuna, the great first century master. And then next to him is Chandakirti, the author of the text we studied together. Think you're really in the presence of these amazing masters. Receiving their inspiration. And then generate the motivation by thinking, may this session become a cause for me to generate great compassion, the mind of enlightenment, and eventually the enlightened state of a Buddha that equals the attainment of Buddha Shakyamuni for the benefit of all sentient beings. And with this motivation, without letting go of that motivation, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, the four measurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Okay, great. Now you have homework to do. That is, I ask you to meditate on compassion 20 times a day. I chose that number because I thought if you remember to do it 10 times, that's a lot. That's wonderful. So, of course, if you can do it 20 times, that's great. And for next week, it won't be much different. It's just a matter of getting used to habituating yourself to this kind of meditation. And however contrived your meditation or your mind of compassion is, your generation of compassion or your compassion is, never mind. It's just getting used to it, plus getting a sense of the benefits, also your own personal benefit of generated compassion. I want to have the time now to ask you how you felt in those moments. There's no opportunity to do that. One thing I want to point out is that compassion does not just refer to empathy, to feeling for other people's suffering, to kind of think about it and possibly feel low about all the suffering that sentient beings go through. There's a tendency initially that we feel, once we start reflecting upon all the problems, etc., that we feel depressed about it, we feel low, we feel not just do I have to deal with my own suffering, now I have to deal with everyone else's. So it's important to differentiate. That's not compassion. That's not considered to be compassion, to just think of all the suffering. It goes along with a loving attitude and the wish, may they be free. And as we will see today, it'll be combined with another wish. May I be able to free them. May I be able to do something to free them. And that gives you a sense of determination. It gives you mental strength, which leads you away from this sense of depression or feeling of helplessness, rather the wish, may I be able to do something. And we continue to start at the beginning. There's a lot of emphasis on compassion, since the text talks about compassion in general and then describes three types of compassion. And as we talk about the three types of compassion, you come to see that compassion does not just refer to the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, but there's also compassion that is combined with a certain understanding. So wisdom and understanding with regard to reality, which makes it even easier to get that sense of, I can do something, I have to do something, the sense of determination, instead of feeling low about yourself, or feeling, not about yourself, but feeling depressed about all the problems that you encounter, or all the problems that you become aware of that sentient beings have. So very important. Compassion, if you feel like there's a strong care for other sentient beings and a determination. I can do this. I will do something. I think then you're definitely on the right track towards generating genuine compassion. All right. Now, if you go to the text, last time I explained one verse. We only did one verse. It is a bit of a difficult verse because it talks about 4 types of great beings. 4 types of great beings. They're also described as Arya beings. That is, beings who realized reality directly, who have had a direct experience of what's called emptiness or selflessness. And so these great beings, Shravakas are mentioned, middle-level Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Those are those 4 great beings. I've mentioned them in the order in which they're mentioned in this text. So Shravakas, middle-level Buddhas, as they're called here, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So Shravakas, here the author, the translator chose to use the word Shravaka, which is the Sanskrit word for hearer, or for a person who hears, who listens to the teachings of the Buddha. That's really the etymology. That's the meaning of the word itself. It can also be the meaning can also be translated as the one who listens and proclaims, the one who listens to the teachings of the Buddha and then proclaims, that is, teaches them to other, without necessarily practicing. So here, a Shravaka is a person who's mainly interested in liberation, but may listen to Bodhisattva teachings how to attain enlightenment, and without being interested, him or herself, passing them on to others. So that's the meaning of Shravaka. And that, of course, doesn't mean that every Shravaka does exactly that, but that's the name that was given to this practitioner. So those are beings, those are, sentient beings, practitioners who are interested in self-liberation, and their personality is that of being more social, receiving a lot of teachings from the Buddha. Then you have, here they're called middle-level Buddhas, but the usual term is pratyeka Buddhas, or solitary realizers. Now, middle-level Buddhas, why are they called middle-level Buddhas? It's literally, the Tibetan word is middling Buddhas, because the word Buddha does not necessarily mean enlightenment. The word Buddha has different meanings. It can mean to blossom like a lotus. It can mean to awaken, so awaken like a Buddha, but it can also mean to understand or to realize. And what is meant here is that a solitary realizer, who's also like the hearer, basically aims towards liberation, even though there's some solitary realizers who would like to become enlightened like a Buddha, but they don't have the drive to do it for all sentient beings. They don't have that level of compassion. And so therefore, instead of attaining the state of a Buddha, they first become liberated, and then, as everyone else, eventually will become Buddhas. So therefore, solitary realizers, they also aim for their own liberation. And in comparison to, or in comparison to the heroes or the Shravakas, they're much more solitary. They practice much more solitary, in a solitary fashion. That's all you need to know for now. So there are these 2 characters, 2 great practitioners aiming for self-liberation, one more social, one less social. And the solitary realizer is called middling Buddha because here it refers to, the word is Tattva Buddha. Tattva Buddha actually just means someone realizing emptiness, suchness, someone realizing suchness. So whether it's a Shravaka, or that is a hearer, or a solitary realizer, or a Bodhisattva, all of them have to realize emptiness. They have to realize suchness to attain their respective goals. So for Shravaka and a Pratyeka Buddha, that is for hearer and a solitary realizer, to use the English terms, they have to realize emptiness to become self-liberated, and a Bodhisattva needs to realize emptiness to become a Buddha. But of those, they are different in terms of their capacity, in terms of their enthusiasm, their determination, etc. So if you compare those three, the Bodhisattva is the highest kind of practitioner, and the Shavaka the lowest, and in the middle you have the solitary realizer, just in terms of their determination, their abilities, etc. Of course, compared to us, they're all incredibly wonderful, amazing beings, but just comparing those three in terms of their love, their determination, and so forth. So Shravakas, and then middle level, as in like in terms of understanding, realizing emptiness, they're between the Shravakas and between Bodhisattvas. Okay, so middle level Buddhas. But those two, Shravakas and middle level Buddhas, that is hearers and solitary realizers, they arise from the Buddha. They're the result from a Buddha, from the teaching of the Buddha. Here, sovereign sages means the teaching of any of a Buddha, like in our case, Buddha Shakyamuni, or a different kind of Buddha. Buddhas themselves, they are born from bodhisattvas. They are the result of bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas, again, first you have to be a bodhisattva to become a Buddha. And so what is the causes of bodhisattvas? It's three types of mind: compassion, non-dual cognition, and the awakening mind, or bodhicitta. Okay, so but this needs to be specified. So what gives rise to a bodhisattva? Compassion, definitely compassion. And what else? An understanding of emptiness that is so I should explain the first one. So, and the third one first. So there's compassion, and there's the awakening mind, the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But it's not actual bodhicitta, which is a spontaneous wish, which is a kind of wish that you don't have to strain, you don't have to make an effort. It just arises naturally due to habituation. It just arises naturally. But before you've reached that level of habituation, you have to make an effort for it to arise. It requires some strain, some effort. You need to take a few moments to meditate on bodhicitta, the mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that is therefore called contrived bodhicitta. Contrived in the sense that it doesn't arise naturally and spontaneously, not yet, until the time has come for it to arise that way. But that's really important, because before you can generate the spontaneous wish, may I become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, before you can generate that, it's contrived. It takes a while to get used to it. And so here, that's a cause of a bodhisattva: contrived bodhicitta, compassion, of course, and also an understanding of emptiness. If you're a kind of person who, in terms of emptiness, in terms of your practice, is said to be of sharper faculties. If you're not satisfied with someone telling you about enlightenment, but rather you want to know, is enlightenment really possible? You really make an effort. And for that, you first come to understand emptiness. You first understand that phenomena don't exist the way they appear, why it makes sense that our misapprehension of reality, which holds on to phenomena existing exactly as they appear, is the cause for all our trouble. So once you understand emptiness, you can really understand that our misapprehension of reality, that is holding on to phenomena existing the way they appear, that's the main troublemaker. And so, although there's no value judgment, you should be a person who realizes emptiness first, you should be a person of sharper faculty. No, it doesn't matter. It's like whatever suits you. The most important part is that you generate great compassion and bodhicitta. But here there is this differentiation between those bodhisattvas who first understand emptiness and then they generate the wish to become Buddhas, and those who do it the other way around. So here in this case, they talk about someone who generates an understanding of emptiness first, combined with this contrived bodhicitta. Okay, so you have an understanding of emptiness, having already generated the mind that wishes to become enlightened, but that is not this spontaneous mind yet. It's this contrived bodhicitta. Okay, so therefore, the three causes of a bodhisattva here, in this case, a particular kind of bodhisattva who realizes emptiness before generating compassion, before generating bodhicitta. So that kind of bodhisattva, those three causes for that kind of bodhisattva are compassion, contrived bodhicitta, and wisdom once you have generated contrived bodhicitta. Wisdom, understanding emptiness. Those are the three causes. Okay? All right. And of those three, compassion is the root cause. Compassion gives rise to, of course, contrived bodhicitta. And it also gives rise, therefore, to the realization of emptiness that is conjoined, that is influenced by contrived bodhicitta. All right, so compassion, that's what we're focusing on. Maybe the first verse, it's a little bit difficult, some of these, the three causes and what I just said, but most important for you to understand is compassion. For now, how did I define compassion? A mind, a loving attitude or an affectionate mental factor or mental factor of affection, which wishes for sentient beings to be free from suffering. That's compassion for, well, it's in general compassion, but even more specific, we say it's compassion here, but more specifically, we're talking about great compassion. There's a state of mind that's described as great compassion, which can be defined from the point of view of what it focuses on and what kind of suffering it wishes sentient beings to be free from. So it doesn't just focus on one person or two people or, the people I know or the people I like or I don't like. No, it focuses on all sentient beings, even without knowing all sentient beings, but still getting a sense, whoever there is, even if I don't know them, and most people, I don't know, most sentient beings, I don't know. So with regard to those sentient beings, whoever it is, may they be free from suffering. May they be free. So it's kind of like, if I were to meet them, well, this would apply to them, of course, too. So just having a sense, whoever exists, whoever is not a Buddha yet, may they be free from any kind of suffering. And here suffering needs to be also specified. I mentioned that last time. What does it mean? It means specifically free from not just suffering of suffering, the ordinary suffering, but suffering of change, that is ordinary samsaric happiness that limits us, that keeps us attached to samsara, and pervasive conditioned suffering, that is having this mind, this body, that is the basis for us experiencing suffering of suffering and suffering of change. All right, so may they be free from all this. May they be free from all these limitations. To wish for all sentient beings to be free, well, from any limitations, even further than that, not just the three types of sufferings, but even more, anything that is in the way to become a Buddha. Now, the question is, with regard to this kind of compassion, who has this kind of compassion? In general, really strictly speaking, it is said that great compassion is a mind that focuses on all sentient beings and wishes for them to be free from the three types of suffering. Three types of suffering. So, suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive conditioned suffering, as just explained. Which is just another way of wishing for all sentient beings to have liberation. Now, do Shravakas and Pratikya Buddhas, that is hearers and solitary realizers, do they have this kind of compassion? This would be a debate. In the context of debating this text, the question would come up, and some people say no, they don't have that compassion. But I have a hard time accepting that, and one of my teachers, Geshe Kelsang, he once talked about exactly this point, basically arguing, why would they not have compassion for all sentient beings? I mean, wishing for them to be free from the three types of suffering? Surely, why not? But why not for all sentient beings? Which sentient beings do they not wish to be free from the three types of suffering? So basically, Geshe talked about this assertion or this view that great compassion is not just that. Although it's very clear in the scriptures that hearers and solitary realizers do not generate great compassion. They don't need to. Maybe, yeah, maybe some of them, but for their goal, they don't need to. But do they generate this wish for all sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering? Yeah, why not? So therefore, great compassion, he just explained great compassion slightly differently, saying that great compassion, and citing a source for that, and in the scriptures there's sources for that. Basically, it's not just the wish for all sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering. That's the kind of compassion that a bodhisattva would have to generate. No, it's the wish, may I be able to do that. May I be able to free all sentient beings from suffering, okay, from the three types of suffering. May I be able to do that? Not just the wish for them to be free, may I be able to free them? And that's your homework for next week. That it's not just wishing for them, but may I be able? May I be able to do this? So that is how we explain compassion. That makes perfect sense for me. Why should a hero or solitary realizer? They don't need that because they don't set out to become enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. They will eventually, but in the meantime, for now, they wish to become self-liberated. And then they reach their goal, and as any other living being having Buddha nature, will at some point definitely become fully enlightened. But for the time being, for as long as they aim for their own liberation, they have this type of compassion, the wish for all sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering. However, they don't have what's called great compassion because they don't have the wish, may I myself be able to bring this about. So this is an important point. It's debated a lot, actually, or, well, yeah, it's debated, definitely. Like, do hearers have solitary realizers? Do they have that level of compassion? And it would be bizarre to say. Some say, yeah, they have compassion for many sentient beings. For many sentient beings, they have the wish for them to be free from the three types of suffering, but not for all sentient beings. Why not for all? What's the big deal? Like, which ones are they excluding? And there's just not a good answer to that. They understand that all sentient beings lack inherent existence. They understand that all sentient beings are impermanent, but they don't understand that, or they don't have that wish. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, I'm not encouraging you to debate it. I'm just giving you the answer. Well, my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion. There are different opinions on that. All right. But I think first verse we're done with. Second verse. It reads, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment, I will praise compassion at the start of all. So here, Chandrakirti is saying, I'm praising compassion here. As it's customary, you start off a text. When you teach a text, you praise at first of all, you pay homage to something, some entity, to inspire you, to give you the strength to complete the text, to inspire the readers, people who study the text. So it's always done. It's also a sense of humility. It kind of brings forth your humility. It's not like, oh, I'm going to write this book, I'm such a great author. No, you start praising something greater than yourself. And in that way, your humility, you're humble, and of course it's more inspirational, etc. So there are numerous reasons for doing so. And here Chandrakirti chooses compassion, which it's so beautiful, so special actually, that instead of praising the being, he praises this mind that is so important. And that's like a thread throughout the entire practice. Why? Because he's saying compassion is important at the beginning, compassion is important in the middle, and compassion is important at the end. Middle here, end, sorry, I should say end first. End means at your goal, when you reach your goal, when you reach Buddhahood. Of course, a Buddha is incredibly compassionate, will now, from the moment they're enlightened, Buddhas will set out to benefit other sentient beings, of course, because of their incredible compassion. So it's important at the end. But of course, it's also important while you're practicing. Compassion needs to be there the whole time. And in the beginning, anyway. So, beginning. What is the beginning? Well, setting out, engaging in Mahayana practice. And no matter who you are, you may feel, oh, I'm not a really compassionate person, I cannot do this, etc. But we all have a biological factor, as His Holiness would call it, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama calls it, like biological compassion. We all have a natural amount of compassion. It's limited, yes, but we all generate it, and even if it's just towards a dog or towards a dolphin or towards our children, whoever, but we all have that kind of compassion, which means it can be increased. And therefore, no matter who we think we are, we can all generate compassion. And through habituation, this can become stronger. It becomes stronger. There's just no way it won't become stronger. So one purpose for you to make you generate compassion, well, there are different reasons for that. One reason is I want you to get a sense how good it feels, how compassion is really good for us. It's so healthy. If you generate it again and again, you will see it puts your mind at rest, it calms you, it allows you, it gives you more strength, more resilience, etc. So those are the aspects I want you to discover for yourself. But also, I want you to get a sense how it grows stronger. The first day is harder than the second day, assuming you did it 20 times. So, of course, if you only did it on the first day and then you took a break, and of course, then familiarity will not really set in, will not kick in. But as Shantideva said, there's nothing that doesn't become easier through familiarity. Okay, so naturally your compassion will grow, be easier to generate compassion, and it'll grow and grow and grow and get stronger and stronger and stronger. So therefore it's important at the beginning, in the sense that if we can generate great compassion, and here compassion really refers to great compassion. What is so special about great compassion? It is set to awaken our Buddha nature. It is set to awaken our Buddha nature. So we all have Buddha nature, but it needs to be awoken. This term is used, awake your Buddha nature. It's so beautiful. It does something to your Buddha nature. It awakens it. It brings its full capacity to the front, I guess, to the top, basically, in the sense that now things are truly changing. And in what sense? Well, so far, it was only my happiness, my suffering. I was concerned with my own suffering, my own welfare, basically. So I don't even know whether that can be called self-compassion. But basically, we just don't want to suffer. A loving attitude towards ourselves, wanting ourselves to be free from suffering. I'm not sure we have that. That loving attitude is a bit of a tricky one. Do we really accept ourselves? Do we feel we deserve happiness? So that type of mind of self-compassion, it needs to have the aspect of love and acceptance and closeness to oneself. We have, at moments, we just wish to be free from suffering, but do we really have, it's just a natural impulse to be free from the suffering of suffering, but do we really accept ourselves and have that love towards ourselves? I don't think so. So self-love, of course, is really important. And together with that is that sense of acceptance and self-love, accepting my mistakes, understanding I have good qualities, I have bad qualities, but there's room for improvement. So an acceptance of who I am, feeling good with myself, being my own good friend, being able to be alone with myself, being comfortable with myself. And on top of that, wishing to be free from suffering, but not just from the ordinary suffering of suffering, but to be free from the three types of suffering. If I have that loving attitude, well, the wish for me to be free from the three types of suffering is called renunciation. The wish to be free from the three types of suffering is usually the definition, if I myself wish to be free from the three types of suffering, well, that's called renunciation. Renunciation is a word we use in the English language. It doesn't mean throw out all your stuff, shave your head, wear something unfashionable in maroon or whatever. But it basically means the wish to go beyond this ordinary happiness, our suffering, of course, but also to go beyond this ordinary experience we have. That's renunciation. All right. So basically, before I can wish for all sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering, I should see their disadvantages and then naturally develop the wish, oh, I don't want this. This is a disadvantage. I don't want a disadvantage. So therefore, actually, before great compassion, we need to have the wish, a sense of renunciation that is, however strong that is, but the wish to be free from the three types of suffering. But before that, we're always concerned, my suffering, my problem. I want to get rid of my suffering, my problems. And we're not really concerned with others more than we're concerned with ourselves. And with great compassion, you've changed that. Once you have great compassion, and here I'm not talking about contrived great compassion, the one that doesn't arise spontaneously, because just as with bodhicitta, you have a contrived and uncontrived version. Great compassion is the uncontrived version that arises spontaneously, where the welfare of other sentient beings is more important to you than your own. But that's not stupidity. It's not like, oh, being suicidal, as in like, well, I don't care about myself any longer. It's only for the well. I'm mainly concerned. You're concerned with your own welfare, but you put others' welfare before yourself, and you keep healthy and strong and what's the word? Rested for the welfare of others, because you have to be strong to be of benefit to others, to fulfill that wish. And like I said, great compassion, if we take it according to Geshe Kelsang's explanation, well, not just the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, but the wish, may I free all sentient beings from all the three types of suffering, from the different types, or in short, the three types of suffering. So you need to be strong, you need to be rested, you need to be well fed, you need to be able to do so. So of course you naturally look after yourself. But it also comes from the understanding, to be really happy, you need this kind of compassion. To be really happy, you need compassion. Whatever we think brings us happiness, it doesn't bring us happiness. Putting yourself before everyone else and taking the bitter piece of the pie, or just symbolically speaking here. So basically, we have a sense, if I just look after my own welfare, if I don't look after my own welfare, who will? We have that kind of sense. Who else? So if I'm not selfish, no one will look after me. But we're actually harming ourselves with that. Looking after ourselves alone and leaving behind everyone else. No. The way to find true happiness just in this lifetime. So as Shantideva says, if I don't equalize and exchange myself for others, not only will I not attain enlightenment, I will not even have happiness in samsara. So if you like samsara, fine, knock yourself out, enjoy. But do with compassion, because you can only really enjoy samsara with compassion. Okay. So the only way to get that sense, to really generate deep sense of satisfaction and happiness and be free from worry, well, is to generate compassion. And in this case here, we're looking at great compassion, not only the wishful sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering, or even if you just generate the wish for them to be free from all suffering, even that would be already a means to happiness in this life. If you can do that, or even take it further, may all sentient beings be free from the three types of suffering. Well, that is the recipe to happiness in this lifetime, just in samsaric existence. But of course, it's also the turning point where it's not me that's in the center of the universe, it's all sentient beings. And so this is a huge turn in your life. Once you really have great compassion, you've turned around, you put others before yourself in that way, And therefore, you've awoken your Buddha nature. Now you're really making an effort. Now you're the seed, whatever it is you want to call it, towards enlightenment, that's awoken. So things are really changing. So it's important, therefore, in the beginning. It's like the seed. Okay, so you have to plant a seed, and that's great compassion. But that great compassion will increase. It will not remain the same. It has to increase. It's not enough to just have great compassion. Its strength needs to enhance in its strength. And it will. I mean, if you practice properly, it will naturally increase. It will get stronger and stronger. So therefore, in the beginning, it's like a seed. In the middle, it's like adding water. It's like adding water to a plant. So if you want to attain enlightenment, enlightenment is the fruit, basically. It's just, it can be compared to a fruit. So first you need to plant a seed. That's great compassion in the beginning. Then you add water. You have to add water. You have to continuously add water. So on your path, you need to continuously work on your great compassion. And then at the very end, it's like the harvest. So compassion is like the harvest. It's like, well, when you attain Buddhahood, is that which you need to now, of course, enact your wisdom, to enact, that is, to live your wisdom, to go out of the way, as in like being a Buddha, teaching whatever is necessary for sentient beings to become enlightened themselves. Again, driven by great compassion. So in other words, therefore, compassion can be compared to a seed that is needed at the beginning, like water in the middle, and the harvest at the end. So that means compassion is important at the beginning of your spiritual practice, while you're on the path towards full enlightenment, and of course, once you're enlightened. Okay, so what does that teach us? That compassion is most important. Great compassion is most important when it comes to Dharma practice. And whether you're Dharma practitioner, in particular a Mahayana Dharma practitioner on the way to Buddhahood, how can you check? Just check your level of compassion. How strong is your great compassion? Even if it's contrived, but this wholeness focuses so much on it, and it makes so much sense. Compassion. It's so important because it's like a thread. It's that which you definitely need all the time. Without it, no way you can get anywhere. So it's one of the most important states of mind. And also with bodhicitta, it can be misunderstood. I've told people this story of a friend of mine. Well, first of all, how is bodhicitta, or the mind of enlightenment? How is it defined? It's defined as a main mind, as a consciousness that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it seems like for the benefit of all sentient beings, it's kind of set at the end. So it seems like, yeah, but most important is you wish to become enlightened. But forgetting possibly that it's out of this great compassion. It's because it's really because you want to benefit sentient beings, and because enlightenment is the best way to do it. It's kind of like a means to an end. Enlightenment is just a means to an end to benefit all sentient beings. So we may get a sense just wishing to become enlightened, that's enough. And some of you know the story. I have a friend who said to me one day, and she's not an arrogant person. She would not be like, oh, I'm a great person. No, but she said very sincerely, she said to me, well, I'm a bodhisattva. It was without pride. She's like, I'm a bodhisattva. And I was like, oh, you're a bodhisattva? And she's like, yeah, I'm a bodhisattva. What makes you think you're a bodhisattva? I said, she said, well, because I have bodhicitta. So you have bodhicitta? Yes, I have bodhicitta. What does that mean? And she's like, well, I have the wish to become enlightened. I obviously have bodhicitta, right? She thought she wanted to be enlightened. That means she has bodhicitta. That means she's a bodhisattva. So it was totally innocent. She hadn't studied the Dharma in great detail, and so it was totally natural that she wasn't aware what bodhicitta meant, and it was so innocent. But yeah, it's very clear in that case that there was a misunderstanding, thinking just the wish to become enlightened. No, it has to be for the welfare of others. If it meant something else to run a marathon to fulfill your wish to benefit all sentient beings, then you wouldn't wish for enlightenment, you would wish for running the marathon, right? I mean, just anything that takes you there. So oftentimes it's compared to wishing to have water. If you wish, you're thirsty and you wish for water, that's your main wish. And then, as a means to an end to getting the water, you wish for a glass. So what do you mainly want? You want the water. And the glass helps you to achieve that, to get the water, basically. All right. So in that sense here, similarly, we say great compassion is what you want. It's the main, that's the main driving force. And the wish to become enlightened is really just a means to an end, as in like you can fulfill your wish in that way, because you're most effective if you're Buddha to benefit others. All right. Okay. So that's this verse number 2. As compassion alone is accepted to be the seat of the perfect habits. So here in the sense of this is where your Buddha nature is awakened, and you need that. This is where things are really changing, and that this great compassion is the seed for all the other qualities. And that's important at the beginning, like a seed. It's like a beginning. It's like the water that nourishes it, so it has to get stronger. It's stronger, like this initial seed of compassion has to be strengthened with water, which is continuous great compassion, which is like water, to gain then the fruit that is a long source of enjoyment, reaching the state of a Buddha, enjoyed by other sentient beings, now being able to benefit them fully. And therefore, since that's the case, Chandrakirti says, I will praise compassion at the start of all of giving this teaching. Now, those first two verses, here Chandrakirti talks about compassion in general. But compassion can be divided into 3. There are 3 types of compassion. This is, well, one thing maybe just to note here, you may notice the vocabulary can be a little bit difficult because, well, the commentaries you have here, well, you have first Chandrakirti's text, of course, and then you have Lama Tsongkhapa's text, translated by translated by the same translator. But Lama Tsongkhapa's text is an older version. It was done before Thupten Jinpa, Geshe Thupten Jinpa, he's the translator, translated the text you have right now. That is the text you have right now. There's an older version and a newer version. And Lama Tsongkhapa's, the translation of Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Chandrakirti's text, that still contains the older version. And the version you have now, of only the entry into the middle way, you have a newer version here. So when you read the commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa, be aware that he uses different words there. He doesn't talk of Shravakas, he talks of disciples, right? I mean, the improvements are definitely all positive ones. I've noticed quite a few changes. I've compared them. And the changes he made, I'm in total support of those. So Shravakas is one word. But as I was comparing them, I was thinking I need to point this out. If you do read Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, understanding that you won't understand everything, but it gives you a really good sense of what these verses are about. Be aware of the different vocabulary. Okay, that's just a side note. All right, so therefore, we talk of compassion in general. I've already defined it. It's not just the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. It is the wish for all sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of suffering. And it's a loving attitude, an accepting, loving attitude towards all sentient beings. And not just that, it's the wish, may I be able to bring this about. All right, so if we can agree on that's what great compassion is, though it is debatable. The aspect of wishing myself, may I be able to do it. But anyway, if you think along those lines and we practice that, there's no harm. Okay, that's in general. But there are 3 types. 3 types. What are the 3 types? And here again, the wording is different, and I use particular vocabulary, but you'll come across different vocabulary as well. Compassion that observes only sentient beings. That's the first type of compassion. Compassion that observes only sentient beings. That observes only sentient beings. That's the first type. The second type is compassion that observes Dharma. Compassion that observes Dharma. Or you could also say compassion that observes phenomena. Here the Tibetan word is Chu, and Chu means Dharma, which means phenomena, or Dharma as in like Buddha Dharma, Buddhism, for instance. Okay, it has many different meanings. So whichever you prefer, compassion that observes Dharma or compassion that observes phenomena. Both are a little misleading. You'll see what they refer to. And anyway, you'll see why it's a little bit misleading. And then the third type of compassion, and those are just the names, so don't get caught up in the names when they sound weird, is compassion that observes the non-observable. Compassion that observes the non-observable, that which is not to be observed. Okay, so again, compassion that observes only sentient beings, compassion that observes Dharma, and compassion that observes the non-observable, or that which is not to be observed, that cannot be observed, or the non-observable. Observe, as in like OBSERVE. Observe. Okay, this is a slightly difficult word, observe. What does that actually mean? Sometimes people translate it as focus on, to focus on, only on such and such. But then the observable, the non-observable becomes difficult to translate. If you hear me, I say in Tibetan, Mingme la mikben simchen. Mingme la mikben ninje. If you hear me say, you hear Ming two times. That's the observable and the non-observable, right? So it comes across in Tibetan, it has that same Mingme la mikbe ninje, Mingme mik twice. So in English, to have the same kind of sense, to get the same sense of the word, I call it compassion, or great compassion, observing the non-observable. Okay, those are just the words. Those are just the names. They're odd names, all right, never mind. In English, even odder than in Tibetan, but you get used to it like anything. But what's behind it? What's behind those two, those three? Okay, the first one is pretty easy. It's just basically, it's the mind that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering, or the mind that wishes, may I myself be able to bring this about, really. So it's the mind, may I myself bring this about, that all sentient beings are free from the three types of suffering. And that's it. The mind, there's only that mind, and there's no other mind other than that, just that wish. So it's only focusing on sentient beings and their suffering. It's just observing sentient beings. The second is, again, great compassion, yes, but at the same time, as you have great compassion, that wish, it's a wishing type of mind, wishing for them to be free from all suffering, or may I myself free them from all sufferings, from the three types of suffering. It's that, but at the same time, there's a mind that knows, another mind that knows that sentient beings are impermanent, that knows sentient beings, that realizes sentient beings are impermanent. So here, Dharma refers to the impermanence, not just phenomenon, or refers to a particular phenomenon, which is the impermanence. So it's just called chila migbenija. So it just says, it literally says in Tibetan, compassion that observes Dharma. Okay, here the Dharma is impermanence. Okay, so it's a kind of, it's this great compassion, but at the same time, as you have that wish, as there's that wish that I just talked about, there's also an understanding, another mind. There's two minds, the wishing mind and a mind that understands sentient beings are impermanent. That's really important. That's really important to understand It's not just method. Here, there's a combination of method and also wisdom, of an understanding. The fact that sentient beings change all the time, and with that, of course, understanding that their problems and sufferings, they change all the time. So when you have that understanding, it's much harder to be depressed, to feel depressed about sentient beings suffering, because you know it's not going to last. It's not going to be there the whole time. Everything's changing all the time. So our mind, when we think of the suffering of sentient beings, our mind, because of our habitual tendency to solidify things, we have a sense, oh, the sentient beings are stuck in suffering and they're always suffering, and we feel really depressed. Any sense of depression comes out of a sense of non-changeability, a sense of solidity. And be aware, this is not a very coarse intellectual kind of reflection. No, it's an emotional, it's much more an emotional perception. Our emotions perceive things. Our emotions perceive things. And there are a lot of emotions that are more on a subconscious level, so that we're not really aware of them. How they suggest solidity and permanence. And sometimes when you feel depressed about your own suffering or the suffering of another person, when it pulls you down, check. Is there a sense it's always the same? There's this block of suffering, and that's there the whole time. That's the sense of permanence. That's permanence. It's changing all the time. The experience of suffering is never the same from moment to moment. There's a moment of it sucks, and then it changes, and it's right, and it's a fluctuating experience. Suffering, whatever it is, it's never the same from moment to moment. So sentient beings are changing, their problems are changing, and therefore compassion, great compassion here, the second type. And obviously, I mean, that's even better than the first type, just focusing on sentient beings. It comes along with the understanding sentient beings are impermanent. And of course, by implication, your focus is on sentient beings, so it comes along with the knowledge that sentient beings are impermanent. But then you also know, not with the same mind, but with another mind, there's also the knowledge, well, their sufferings, their experiences, they're impermanent too. So that's very important, to have compassion that gives you strength, that gives you determination, that doesn't pull you down. Excuse me. It doesn't pull you down, but gets you going, gets you determination, just gives you more strength, gives you more perseverance. Okay, but that's only the second type. So the name is compassion that observes, not impermanence, but dharma. Okay, could also say dharma. And then I could also say observes impermanence, really, but that's not the name. Okay, and then the third type is compassion that observes the non-observable, which really means, again, you have compassion, and at the same time as you have this great compassion that focuses on sentient beings, you have another mind that realizes the emptiness of sentient beings, the lack of inherent existence of sentient beings. So not just their impermanence, as with the former type of compassion. No, here it's understanding the lack of inherent existence of those sentient beings that at the same time you have compassion for. So non-observable means emptiness is non-observable, cannot be observed with the ordinary mind. So this is implied by the word non-observable, that it's not observable by an ordinary mind. So you must have a mind that's not the ordinary mind that's totally influenced just by our misapprehension of reality. It's already quite a special mind in comparison to our ordinary types of mind. So it's called, emptiness is sometimes described as non-observable in the sense that an ordinary mind cannot observe it. Okay, so now you have three types of compassion. The first type of compassion is just compassion on its own. The second type is compassion together with another mind that realizes impermanence of sentient beings. So not just do you have compassion that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, that's one type of mind, but at the same time as you have that mind, you have another mind that knows those sentient beings are impermanent. Very powerful. So you have already a combination of method, the emotional aspect. Method is it's just another word for the emotional side, if you like, of Buddhist practice, and the wisdom side, the rational side of Buddhist practice. So that is the understanding that sentient beings are impermanent. So the compassion, it's a little bit misleading. Compassion that observes Dharma, that observes impermanence, here Dharma meaning impermanence, doesn't mean that the compassion itself observes it. It means it's kind of like just a short kind of version of saying compassion that comes along with an understanding that observes the impermanence of sentient beings. Okay? All right, that's the second type. And the third type is compassion that observes the non-observable. In other words, compassion that goes along with another mind in that same person's continuum that realizes that sentient beings lack independent existence, lack solid, substantial, inherent existence. And of course, what that means, objective existence, etc. We talk about this when we talk about emptiness. So in other words, it realizes it's compassion that arises in the mind of a person who also realizes the emptiness, the selflessness of all sentient beings. Again, how powerful is that? If you believe in some solid, concrete, inherent suffering of sentient beings, no way. There is no such solid suffering. And it gives you a sense, I can remove it. It can be removed because it doesn't exist inherently. Something that doesn't exist inherently can interact with other things, is dependent on other aspects. And therefore, if you have the right kind of causes and conditions, it can be removed and you can contribute to it. And so you get a really deep sense that this is not just some weird wish, may I free sentient beings from all their suffering. No, it can be done. It can be done, simple, because the root cause is the misapprehension of reality, and it can be understood that this misapprehension can be removed by understanding that its main object doesn't exist. And if that can be removed, I can remove it and I can help others to remove it. That's it. I can help others to remove it. If I can remove it, anyone can remove it, so I can show them how to do it. It's as simple as that. I mean, it sounds simple. Of course, it's much harder to put into practice. But I believe the hardest bit is to get to this point where you have great compassion. Geshe Thupten Pasang, he once gave this beautiful analogy. He once said, he's just an incredible contemporary master, Geshe Thupten Pasang. So some of you know him, some don't, but since we're already, well, there's no time to talk about him right now. I will at some other point. So Geshe Thupten Pasang, he gave this beautiful analogy. He said, when we set out to engage in Buddhist practice, in the beginning, it's like driving a bicycle on a very bumpy road, right? Imagine you drive this bicycle. So it's not really, it doesn't have any feathers or something that kind of, whatever bumps there are that you don't feel them. No, you feel every bump. It's like this old rusty bicycle, and you just, that's your Buddhist practice. That's your practice. That's your Dharma practice. It's like so difficult because your mind is like these potholes. You're grasping at inherent existence, at permanence, attachment, etc. They're like these potholes, and it's hard. It's really difficult. But at some point, he says, you reach like the highway, where you have a very smooth road, and now things are easier. Oh my God, in the beginning, oh God, Dharma practice, I hate it. I know I should do it, but oh, it's so difficult. Well, I hate it is maybe exaggerated, but you have a hard time doing it until you reach the smooth road. And then, you still have to move and move the pedals and go and make an effort, but it's not the same. You don't face all these obstacles, these potholes, etc. So to me, it would make perfect sense. And he didn't really specify at what level, or maybe he did, I don't remember at what level that was the case. But to me, it makes sense. Once you have great compassion, that's when things are smoother, even if it's contrived, uncontrived anyway. But wow, sentient beings. And then whatever effort, we're doing it for sentient beings, big deal, right? there's a problem. All right, it's for the benefit of sentient beings. It's okay. So it's much more bearable. And of course, if you face everyday problems, oftentimes you feel I can't practice Dharma. I have a lot of everyday problems. I'm so busy with my everyday problems. I can't practice Dharma. And when things go really well, I don't want to practice Dharma. I'm feeling really well. I don't want to have more hardship, so I don't want to practice. And yeah, so we always have an excuse. But once we put others' welfare before ourselves, look around, sentient beings are suffering. No, that's unacceptable. My own suffering, that's one thing, but all sentient, like, no way. And so it's very different. It's very different. I can bear my own samsaric happiness, suffering. I've done that long enough, so big deal. But other sentient beings, no, I cannot. So then your mind becomes much calmer. You've got much more strength. And so you have this resilience. It's like the perfect immune system, but it's not a physical immune system. It's a mental immune system. You have this mental, people abuse you, so what? As long as it doesn't harm sentient beings, also it's okay, right? Bring it on. Rather they abuse me than others. So you don't care. Others criticize you or insult you, right? For their sake, you may stop them. Stop, don't abuse. That's not okay. You may apply strong measures that at the outside look like anger, but there's no anger. It's deep care for that person who are harming themselves because they harm you. And that's why you stop them. You personally don't care, right? Theoretically, doesn't that sound nice? Doesn't that sound beautiful? So you have to try it. You just have to. That's the only way to find out. Generate, try, however artificial it is, fake it until you make it, right? Just generate again and again, 20 times next week. If you can do more, generate the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. And further, may I be able to free all sentient beings from suffering. So do that. But if you haven't done that yet, so you see there's one extra difficulty. May I be able to do that? And one more thing, try to keep it as long as you can. Try to hold that mind as long as you can. So you generate it, and then whatever you do, try to keep it there. And eventually it'll fade, right? And then until your next time. So if you got an app on your smartphone, and I'm pretty sure all of you have smartphones, unless there's like the odd person who doesn't, but most days I think most people have smartphones. If you have a smartphone, I'm pretty sure there must be an app. Is there an app, right, that reminds you 20 times a day? Okay, maybe you can set the time. I'll look it up. I haven't looked it up, but maybe I'll find an app. So there must be an app that reminds you, that goes off. Maybe it's just a vibration. It's not good to have it 20 times. Just kind of have some alarm go off, but just to remind you. And if you don't need that, well, at least do it as often as you can. No problem if it's more than 20 times. So, okay. To get a sense, it actually helps. It helps in terms of making you calmer, being less concerned. If another person abuses you, etc., well, generate compassion for them and all sentient beings. May they be happy. May I bring them happiness and understanding. And here, understanding, of course, that, and this is what the next verse says, the next verse deals with the first type of compassion. What is the first type of compassion? Is compassion that merely observes sentient beings, or that observes only sentient beings. So it doesn't come along with the mind that understands impermanence or emptiness. All right. So to describe that kind of mind, that first type of compassion, that is described with the words, first with the thought, I am. They cling to a self. Then with the thought, mine, they become attached to things. Like buckets on a water wheel, they turn without control. I bow to the compassion that cares for such suffering beings. Here it kind of shows us, because obviously we start off with the first type of compassion. You can't generate great compassion and at the same time know their sentient beings lack permanence, that they're impermanent. You can't do that in the beginning. First, you can only do the first compassion. And how do you generate it? Understand that sentient beings, however obnoxious they are, they're all driven by their misapprehension of the I. They can't help it. They can't help it. There are no evil people. We may think that they're naturally evil and they're just, wow, they were born that way. Yeah, well, maybe they were born that way with these tendencies. Well, no, probably not with these tendencies, but definitely with a grasping onto an I. Oops. I need to close the shutter. Okay, so they were born with this misapprehension. So the thought I am holding onto an inherent I, and they cling to that self. And there, the thought mine. And then they become attached to things. They become attached to I, to mine, and the whole balaga, the whole mess starts, right? It all starts from there. So if you look at sentient beings, how terrible. The people who abuse you, the people who are insulting, etc. Well, they can't help it. It comes out of that misapprehension. It's there. If they didn't have that misapprehension, they would never, ever, ever act that way. So with that, it becomes easier to understand, well, sentient beings are driven by that misapprehension. How terrible they have that misapprehension. I have it myself and I know what it feels like, right? I know what it feels like. I know how much pain it causes me, in the sense that because of my misapprehension, because I feel there's a solid I believe there's an I that is more important than everyone else. And I worry about this I worry about its gain, I worry about its pleasure. I want it to have pleasure and I can't bear if it doesn't have pleasant experiences. I want it to have gain. I hate when it loses. I want it to have a good reputation. I hate when it has a bad reputation. I want it to be praised and I cannot bear criticism, right? 8 worldly dharmas that govern my life. Okay, that's what I'm worried about. That's my worry. That's really my day-to-day worry. Why? Because of that misapprehension. And the same worry, the same anxiety, the same suffering others have too, because first there's the thought I am, then they cling to a self, then with the thought mine they become attached to things, and so forth. So the rest of it I have to explain. I can only do that next time. Okay, so to summarize, what did you learn? What did you learn here? Chaitanya is saying, look, there are these great beings. Some of these great beings, their cause is the Buddha. Then the Buddha himself, he's the result of bodhisattvas. And bodhisattvas are the result of bodhicitta, an understanding of emptiness, contrived bodhicitta, an understanding of emptiness that is influenced by contrived bodhicitta, and great compassion. That's great compassion. That's the root cause of all of those. Great compassion, this incredible mind. That's important at the beginning of our practice. That's important in the middle of our practice. And that's important when we're enlightened. That's the driving force of a Buddha. But we can all generate this kind of compassion. And there are 3 types. So how do we go about generating these 3 types? First, we generate compassion observing only sentient beings, understanding that sentient beings have suffering and I want them to be free from suffering because I want them to be free from the root cause of suffering, which is they're holding on to an I and then clinging to that I, holding on to an inherent I, clinging to that inherent I, clinging to mine, my happiness, and so forth. And then attachment and all the other problems. Okay. All right. Okay. That's it. That's enough for today. I'll explain the last bit of verse 3. We are on verse 3 right now. So you see, it's not that hard to understand, but it requires a little bit explanation. But of course, what's even more important is that we put into practice what we learn here. And you have a whole week to do that, to experiment. Remember last time I talked about it? Buddhism can be taken as a religion, can be taken as a philosophy, and it can be taken as a science. Most important is to take it as a science of the mind. And your mind is the petri dish. So if you're inspired by great compassion, yes, but that inspiration, hearing about it, is not enough. You need to put it into practice. So you have the opportunity this week to put it into practice by way of, as I said, generating the wish, may I myself free all sentient beings from the 3 types of suffering, and to hold it as long as you can. But we'll do a meditation here now which you could do in the morning. And this would be here, the focus for today are the first two lines. And we haven't talked about the last two lines of verse 3. So it's only the first two lines of verse 3. And we'll do a meditation together to give you a sense how to go about it. Oh, yes, there you go. Very good, Shir. Thank you. So these are the two lines, and I'll, of course, expand on that. But those are the lines we will meditate on together in preparation for your next week's homework. Great. So let's start the meditation. As before, we do a little bit of breathing just to let go of any disruptive thoughts, to totally empty your mind, and in that way to become open for the analytical meditation. So now visualize that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Of course, you cannot visualize each one of them, but just get a sense. All sentient beings on this world, in this world, sentient beings in other worlds, they're all filling the space surrounding you. Filling the entire horizon, limitless sentient beings. Animals, humans, and other forms of life. Just visualize totally surrounded by them. And right in front of you, visualize those people you don't like, or those people you find annoying, don't like very much, or even resent. If there's anyone like that, visualize this person or those people sitting right in front of you. Now think all these sentient beings, all these ordinary beings, are just like me, in that they misapprehend reality. And all their faults, all their shortcomings, have their root in this basic misapprehension, being fooled by the way things appear to the mind. First, there is a sense that there is an I. That's different from my mind and body. So, in your own case, first there's the thought, I, or I am. Sense of a solid, intrinsic, independent I. And that gives rise to attachment to the I, holding on to I, holding on to a self, a solid I that's different from everyone else. And that sense of an I gives rise to a sense of mine, my happiness, my gain, my reputation, my possessions, my family, my country. Which leads to attachment to all that is mine. Not being able to let go, holding on to it, believing that my happiness comes from those objects that are mine. Giving rise to anger and hatred when someone tries to take away which is mine, tries to destroy that which is mine, tries to harm the I, the solid I. And that way, giving rise to all sorts of sufferings, worries, anxiety, depression. But this is not just true for myself, this is true for all sentient beings surrounding me. This is true for the ones I don't like and everyone else. They all suffer due to that basic misapprehension. All their negative qualities are the result of that misapprehension that all of us have. And just like myself, they all want to be happy and content. They don't want to suffer. A wish that they cannot fulfill as long as there is this basic misapprehension. And so now first generate the sincere wish, may I be free from this misapprehension. May I be free from this rude ignorance that gives rise to all my other faults, and in that way, to all my problems. And then focus on sentient beings surrounding you and generate that same wish. May all those sentient beings be free from that basic misapprehension. May they experience this happiness that they all wish for and truly deserve. By way of them being free from this misapprehension. Generate a sense of closeness and the wish to be free for them, to be free from this misapprehension, and thereby from the 3 types of suffering. And then lastly, generate the wish, may I be able to free them from this basic misapprehension, and thereby from their 3 types of suffering. Okay. And so at the end of the session, let's dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated together here as a group, studying Chandakirti's text, and even more importantly, meditating on Chandakirti's teachings, in this case, great compassion. May this become one of the causes for us to attain the fully enlightened state of a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings. And with this dedication in mind, we recite the Shantideva's dedication prayer. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the hopeless find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all the medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and the people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thank you very much. We're a little bit over past the time, a few minutes, but just to remind you, well, first of all, have a great week, but that week should be again every day at least 20 times if you can generate great compassion, but not just the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, but the wish for yourself to bring this about. And try to hold this mind for as long as you can. And then, of course, you need to go about your daily activities. But if you can keep that in the back of your mind and just observe this, make it your, well, petri dish, your own object of experience, and see what it does to you. Okay, great. Have a good week and see you again next week.
Geshe, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geshe.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you.
night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye
very
for
much.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye and thanks. Tschüss, Ade.